Let's take a look at the vector display methodology. We have points, lines, and polygons, and now we're looking at, we've done choropleth, which allows us to adjust the polygon colors and so on. And behind this we have the attribute tables. So the attribute tables allow us to look at the information that's associated with each of the individual characteristics. So for example, we can display these points. So these are points that are all police calls essentially, and that's, we can say that's how they're distributed amongst the neighborhood. Now it looks like a bad place to live right here. But if we display these a little bit differently, to take those same points and differentiate from a blue dot what's a burglary and a red square for drugs. So now it gives us a different set of information. It expands upon the story that we can tell. We can get kind of crazy with symbology to open this up, and we can then look at whether it's a weapons thing, a burglary, or narcotics. So we've kind of got some even more information going. So here, these points are obviously they're little schools, and they look like, but it's kind of busy and confusing in this, but so this might be better in that case. Using quantiles, what we can do is the crime count by addresses. So these would be crimes that have occurred at the same address. So 9 to 16 crimes or so on. So it really shows you what particular building is got issues. So again, it's the same information. It's a dot versus a dot, but because there's a higher number of crimes here, it really brings that information forward. Well, you display lines. Here you've got the hard lines for where the river is, and the darker and the shaded lines for the streets. So it kind of allows you to still see the geometry of what's happening with some contrast. So there we've brought in the topographical, so now we can see the how the ground is oriented here. So you got different thicknesses of lines for the different types of streets that are there. Solid lines for more important. This could be the highways, the secondaries, and this is the residential roads. Oh, and symbology for these roads and how they work. Sometimes you might want an outline for a polygon. You may or may not. This gives you a little bit higher contrast. Kind of looks nice like that. Versus this, which doesn't have those outlines. So now your eye gets tending to be brought to the parks and not to the buildings. And here, it's just kind of carried away. That's better. We can use textures. So these are patterns put on for black and white. So it's a little bit easier to, go to this lighter color. This is somewhat easy to work with. The eye gets drawn right to the central area. And so here you've got, this looks a little kindergarten-ish, very bright colors. This is much better because what you've got is that these are not as important. They're kind of at the same level here, and we've only got one color. So we've got kind of, as it states here, a grounding thing in the background, and then the information really stands out on top. So you put a strong boundary around where it's important, and it increases the contrast. I mean, if you look at this very harsh, draws your eye right to it. This your eye can travel across in a little bit easier. So now we've got using the hatching again to to bring them in. Okay, so here's our sort of the hierarchy. So the information is these little red dots with a green background, and we're going to kind of compare that to this. This information is very, very obvious where the information was, where the information is masked in a high contrast background. The background is not what's important. What's important is this information that we're trying to convey. Queries allow us to get a relationship between the vectors, graphics, and the attribute table. And what we can do is we can select from the attribute table, and it highlights the corresponding graphic features. So criterion in, this is what are you after, what's the logical operator, and what's its value. So we establish these logic statements that are important to kind of work through. So for example, this date greater than equal to 2004, and what's the code? The code is drugs, and the percent sign is a wildcard symbol. So it's a name like burglary or burglaries or something. Both of those would get picked up by that, and that would pick up burglaries, business, residential burglaries would get all of those with a wildcard. So the query builder kind of looks like this, and different ones are structured a little bit differently, but they all basically work to the same. You look at one of these, which is the column heading in a attribute table. So we picked the nature of the device here is equal to drugs. So that's the query we're after. And if we do that, we run that query, what happens is only the drug burglaries will show up, or only the drug incidences will show up. And then you can compound this logical. So we want the drug query and that it occurs after 2004. So this will throw out any drug activity that was done before 2004. So it's got to satisfy both. So we put this statement together and run this query and find that it's an even smaller set of data than what we had before.